Here we go on a second Sunday morning in 2021 in Las Vegas, just after 8 o'clock. I'm Brian Feldman, and this is Out of Line. And like most people, I don't see much difference so far in 2021, but I'm still happy and cautiously optimistic that hindsight is finally 2020. You know, wait a minute. You know, if you didn't get that joke, or I should say the feeble attempt for a joke, you need more sleep, right?
I got it. It was terrible. It was terrible. That was probably the worst joke of 2021.
No, it wasn't.
And that's saying something.
Solid. You must have heard it before. It's the only way it's a bad joke. Listen, if you are listening for the first time, we are here live, same time every week on Fox Sports Radio, 98.9 FM at 1340 AM, flagship of the Vegas Golden Knights. This morning, we are at Kickers Gaming and Sports Bar at 931 North Las Vegas Boulevard, just down the road from the old Cashman Field and the Neon Graveyard. And Kickers will be our home for a while because due to COVID-19 protocol, all live shows have been kicked out of the Fox Sports Residential Bancorp studio until further notice. So come on down and join us. We'll hook you up with some free donuts. Orange Juice and Kickers is offering mimosa and Bloody Mary specials during the show. The we once again includes co-host Caleb Herring. You heard him chime in a minute ago, as he does regularly. He's the last UNLV quarterback to lead the Rebels to a bowl game. Also here with us, the only intern in the world with his own theme music.
Nobody beats the Wiz. Nobody beats the Wiz.
That is Spencer the Wiz Ostrovsky. Spencer is also our social media director and now has his own sports talk show, Delivering Sports. That's Friday nights at 7 on KSHP, which is just down the dial, 1400 AM on your radio dial. Also with us, social distancing, back in the Fox Sports Residential Bancorp studio, the only one allowed to be there, producer and future WWE star Dino DeMond, or we should say Dino DeMond Cotton. The show is also streaming on the LV Sports Network, and you can watch the show on Facebook Live. The page is called Out of Line. That's OUTTALINE. You can also follow the show on Instagram and Twitter. That's at Out of Line Fox LV. One more time, at Out of Line Fox LV. And since we are live, your calls and questions are welcome. The Fox Sports Residential Bancorp studio line is 702-876-1340.
Hi, this is Bubby, and it's time for What's on Tap.
What's on Tap brought to you by title sponsor Residential Bancorp. Whether purchasing a new home or refinancing the home you already own, Residential Bancorp is the company you can turn to for all your home financing needs. Residential Bancorp, funding America one neighborhood at a time. On Tap, the NHL and the Vegas Golden Knights season officially starts this Thursday. Running Rebels played 2 games this week for the first time in over a month. Not much different results. Same team. We'll talk about that. The College National Championship game is tomorrow night. And if Ohio State wins, they will have done it in only 8 games. Is that fair? We'll let you know what we think about that. And today's guest, Deion Hodges, a former college wide receiver and current performance specialist, trains a Las Vegas Raider that has been heavily criticized on this show this season. He's going to join us live to defend his guy and talk about the services he provides to some other NFL players that I'm pretty sure you know about. Also, we will be talking in depth about the NFL playoffs, plus our playoff picks of the week. And again, if you are in Las Vegas, come on down, grab some free donuts and orange juice, and join us here at Kickers Gaming and Sports Bar at 931 North Las Vegas Boulevard, just down the road from Cashman Field. I know it's early, but we're awake. Come on down. If you are looking to buy a home or to refinance the home you currently own, choose the company you can trust, Residential Bancorp, funding America one neighborhood at a time.
Hockey players, as you know, are warriors. They don't give up. They come to play every game.
It's time for Nightcap, a cupful of the Vegas Golden Knights. From highlights to interviews to special events, the puck starts here.
this coming Thursday for the Golden Knights. They'll host a back-to-back games against the Anaheim Ducks. They play them on Thursday again at 7. They play them again on Saturday at 7. The most unique season you will ever see in the National Hockey League, although we're getting kind of used to that during the pandemic. But the one big question, I think, with the Golden Knights, and it wasn't really a question, we kind of assumed Robin Lehner was going to be the starting quarterback. How about the starting goaltender, which is about the same thing in hockey. But he was, he's penciled in. He's going to be the guy. Big contract extension he got last year after they brought him over from Chicago. And yet Pete DeBoer says this when it comes to the goalie competition right now.
Yeah. Well, I think both guys have had camps. The scrimmages we've had so far, up until the game, T-Mobile the other night, I think have all been 1-0, 2-1, 3-2 games, with good goaltending both ends. So I've been really happy with where they're both at. We're going to need both guys. I'm sure to start the season, we're going to, look at some type of 50-50 split early to get both of them, both of their games established and ease them in, and then we'll go from there, and then all bets are off with where we go from there.
Well, he's basically saying, Caleb, all bets are off because, it's a competition. Like in any sport, when two guys are playing for the same spot, it's a competition. But Marc-Andre Fleury, and I don't think it's just Pete DeBoer, throwing this out there to keep Marc-Andre Fleury happy. These two are really playing at an equal level right now. And do you think Marc-Andre Fleury really has a legitimate job to win the starting job back over Robin Lehner, at least initially?
Well, I think based on what Pete DeBoer just said, I think, he has a legitimate shot to do it. If he keeps playing well, if he keeps performing at a high level, I think it would make sense. I think in a situation where you have two guys that are completely capable, you go with who's playing better, like point blank, period. Robin Lehner was playing better to finish the season off, so he got the nod. He was the starting guy to finish things off. But if, for whatever reason, Lehner goes into a hole and Fleury starts to shine, obviously I think you should be able to evaluate your talent enough and put the business things aside as far as the next guy up with Robin Lehner. You should put that aside and go with the guy who's going to win your game, who give you the best chance to win. First of all, I want to go back. I can listen to Pete DeBoer and anybody with a Canadian accent talk all day. I think that's a fascinating thing to listen to, first of all. But no, I think the goalie situation is a positive dilemma to have. So I think we can get caught up in spinning things because we want certain people to start or we don't want certain people to start. I think the fandom has an attachment to Marc-Andre Fleury that you want this to be a story. You want Marc-Andre Fleury to get the start and to go out and retire as the heroic starter that finally got us the Stanley Cup trophy. And that's what people would want to see. So that's why this becomes a story. But when it comes down to it, you just have two good goalies and you're going to play who gives you the best chance to win. And that could change halfway during the season. It doesn't have to be the same person at the start. Obviously, somebody could go into a tank and you could put the next guy in. So I think it's a luxury to be able to have this. And I think Pete DeBoer is doing the right thing, keeping it an open-ended conversation because you do have two starters. It's just a matter of who has the hot hand, and that's who you're going to put in between the pipes.
And that's the way it always is. It's going to be the guy with the hot hand and goalie. But I think in the back of his mind, and when I say his, I'm speaking of Pete DeBoer and the rest of the team, Robin Lehner is the guy that was brought aboard to be the goaltender for the foreseeable future, with Marc-Andre Fleury kind of supposed to be riding off into the sunset. But, Marc-Andre Fleury is still in his late 30s. When he has to, he seems to be able to still perform at the highest level. And I think, if anything, this competition is great for him, because it just gets that competitive juice flowing again. And Marc-Andre Fleury is bringing out his best as he still wants the job, as any legit superstar or any professional athlete does. They want to play. And I love the competition. I think when it's said and done, and Robin Lehner's the goaltender of this team. And I think he was brought aboard knowing that Marc-Andre Fleury's days were numbered. And so that's where it's at right now. But I like what Pete DeBoer says. He's going to start it off as like 50-50. They're playing every team twice. So it's kind of cool to have two goaltenders at this caliber where you're not showing the same team on back-to-back nights or two nights in between, the same guy between the pipes. Not a bad thing and a good luxury, as Caleb said, to have. But I still think going forward, Robert Leonard's the guy that they're kind of easing into as the starting goaltender for this team, and we'll see as that goes on. And talking about the Golden Knights, Caleb, when I say a really unique season, it's not just that the season's been shaved down from 82 to 56 games. They are literally only playing 7 opponents all season, and they'll be playing these opponents each 8 times. They're all in this brand new division called the Western Division. What do you think? It's really different. It's kind of apropos for the times, but what do you think of that? Only playing 7 teams for an entire season. You've got over 30 teams in the league.
It'll show you which team is better. I think you'll get a very clear-cut picture of who's the best team in the divisions, the made-up divisions, whatever they are. But I think it could get redundant. I think there could be some rivalries born out of this because you just get some familiarity with guys. Maybe you start to not like a guy seeing him so much. But I think it has the potential for becoming something that nobody wants to see again. I mean, like, it's how many times do you want to see the rematch? And this is a bigger scale, but people got fatigued with watching the Golden State Warriors and the Cavaliers in the NBA Finals, right? Like, so on a regular season level, it would be much easier to get fatigued with watching the same teams constantly playing each other over the course of a season. So it has that potential. Obviously, they're doing it for safety reasons and contact tracing reasons. But, I mean, it could be pretty boring. The positive to me is that the best teams should rise to the top of the division by the end of it. If they're playing the same, schedule pretty much week in and week out, then the best teams will rise up out of the top of it. So it'll make for more interesting playoffs maybe, but the regular season could get a little boring in my opinion.
Could, and the one good thing, I guess, from a fan standpoint, since no fans are allowed, fans might get upset with the opportunity, especially season ticket holders. Man, I don't want to see the same team play 4 times, but since there's no fans allowed, there is going to be some redundancy, but there's also going to be a great deal of familiarity with each of these teams. And as you said, we could see some rivalries born, and probably by the end of the season, some real heated blood between some of these teams. The Western Division, the Vegas Golden Knights are in. If you haven't checked it out, it's the Colorado Avalanche, the St. Louis Blues, Minnesota Wild, Arizona Coyotes, Anaheim Ducks, San Jose Sharks, and the Los Angeles Kings are all now in the division. And get familiar with those teams because, again, that's all you're seeing this year if you're watching the Vegas Golden Knights until they get to the postseason. 56-game schedule starts this coming Thursday night, again, with home-and-home games against the Mighty, not the Mighty Ducks anymore, just the Ducks, Thursday and Saturday. And then actually they start the season with 4 straight home games, and they play 4 games in a row against the Coyotes. They'll play again Monday, Wednesday, and then Friday and next Sunday, all against the Coyotes. So a lot of redundancy, but again, it should make for some heated rivalries, and especially in a sport where hot blood runs hot all the time, you're going to see a lot of people mixing it up and some people really starting to dislike each other, which is kind of what hockey's all about. So it should be really interesting and cool. Caleb, real quick, transitioning over, the Runnin' Rebels had over a month off to get things together, to figure things out. And they go up, they play Colorado State in a home back-to-back games in 2 nights. They lose both games, very, very close games. And Colorado State, what I do want to say about this before I jump down UNLV's throat about being really bad or what have you, Colorado State is a team that's now 9-2. Are they a good team and UNLV just playing a better opponent? Or, I don't know. I haven't looked at who Colorado State's played to win their 9 games. 2 of them came against UNLV. Or is UNLV just really, really bad?
Lost the game by 3, and it was like buzzer beater, a really close game. UNLV only had 8 players available because of COVID-19 restrictions and contact tracing. Colorado State, not just 9-2. Yeah, they all played. Colorado State, not just 9-2. I think they're 5-1 or I believe they're 5-1 in conference. So they're shaking out to be one of the best teams when we talk about common opponents and the conference level of play. They're turning out to be one of the best teams in the conference, at least in this COVID season. And then you look at, performances from guys that we have thought should be lead guys, and what the Rebels were missing with Coleman not being available for that. He's one of the players that wasn't available for this game. And then Caleb Grill only had 3 points, I believe, was his final, scoring total. The fact that they only lost by 3, I think you could say is a good thing. In their second game, after, like you said, being off for a month and not having roster availability for this game, I think you saw some good things with David Jenkins. I think he finished with 29 points. Bryce Hamilton had 28 points. So those guys did what they were supposed to do. They had good games. And if Caleb Grill gives you anything like what we can see from him as far as his shooting and his scoring ability, they win that game. So like I said, a 3-point loss to arguably the best team in the conference right now as far as their record goes, Colorado State, I think you could count, considering the circumstances, a win. I think you could say moral victory. But that's the optimist side of what happened. This season is really means nothing for UNLV for a lot of reasons. And like I said, the 30 days off, college basketball really doesn't have the same luster overall, but especially for teams that have been devastated by COVID like UNLV has. And it's kind of funny that the month layoff is kind of a norm. Like it's like the standard for this like bizarre season with COVID. But in basketball, you can't have that. Like especially college basketball, with the opportunities to play being so precious when you're talking about getting into a tournament or winning the conference, there's no way you can expect to take a month off and still be relevant in the discussion for conference championships or conference tournaments or the big tournament. So for UNLV, and maybe it works out in TJ Altenberger's favor, this year is a mulligan for sure. Like it may end up being a mulligan for the entire college basketball world, but you can't legitimately say that any of these games really are a measure of success for a program. When you only have 8 available players and one of them happens to be one of your main stars isn't even available to play, you can't grade your team. You can't grade what you have. So, I mean, it is what it is. They lost another game, big whoop. At this point, I'm almost turned college basketball off completely because it just doesn't really mean much with the way that COVID has devastated so many teams.
That's going to agree with you on turning college basketball off completely would be John Calipari in Kentucky, who wants to pretend this season doesn't exist. The one and done finally is biting him in the ass up there in Kentucky is these guys just aren't that good. But Caleb, this is a season. They are playing. Everybody's, and the reason I say in all sports, we have to count it because everyone is faced with the exact same situations. And so being that, that being said, it's the best of this year when you're playing your team. If so many guys are out and you're a team that happens to lose some of your prominent players based on either COVID or opting out, well, that's the situation that you're in. And everyone is in the same situation.
Of sports universe, because it doesn't discriminate on which half of the people are going to be affected by COVID. Like, I mean, if you're looking at other levels, like the Browns right now, what they're going through, you can't tell me that they're going through the same situation as the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then they're going to play each other. Like that, to me, that's natural selection. It's not teams building themselves up the right way and doing things the right way. And in college basketball, there's nothing that says that your team won't be affected by COVID or your team will. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows how that's going to shake out. So that's why I say it's just a mulligan, because in sports, the most important thing is that there's an equal playing field for both teams. And if COVID ever interacts with your team, it's no longer an equal playing field. So trying to play and shake out who's the best between teams that aren't playing on an equal playing field is just nonsense to me, in my opinion. Yeah, go ahead and play. If that's your decision, you can play the game. I'm fine with that. But I'm not going to count this year in history with so many teams that are affected differently by COVID, by a natural occurring disease, or depending on who you talk to, a natural occurring disease. But like the idea that COVID is that impactful just doesn't. It's like if some teams were allowed to take performance enhancing drugs and then play against teams that didn't have performance enhancing drugs, we would never say that was a fair season. Some teams are affected by COVID. Other teams haven't been. UNLV's been decimated by it. Colorado State has played most of their schedule. It's apples to oranges. We can't honestly say this is an assessment of who the best teams are in these sports leagues, because it's just not. COVID is impacting it. It's entertaining still. I love that we're still having sports, but honestly, we have to take it with a grain of salt. So when you look back for a team like UNLV in particular, COVID has decimated the season. COVID beat them this year. Like it's not even about who they play. They haven't played anybody. COVID has beat UNLV. So if we're going to measure their success of this season, or if they're good or not based on this season, we'd be doing ourselves a disservice. We'd be doing the university a disservice. That's just my opinion, but it is what it is.
And you know what? I totally can relate to what you're saying, and I think you have a very valid point. However, where I completely disagree is injuries. If all of a sudden, somebody loses, the Bucks right now lose Tom Brady to an injury because he blows out his knee. It's the same as, well, this team's affected because they lost their best player, and this team's affected because of COVID. It's a different type of thing. I get what you're saying, but I'm just saying you can never predict what team's going to lose their 3 best players based on injury. It happens and it changes the dynamic of the season for that team. COVID is just kind of accentuated where all teams are getting hit in different areas like they wouldn't before. And you're right, it affects each team differently. And you can't say it's a judge of UNLV's visibility based on the fact that they have been hit by COVID. That I'll give you, but it's still a view of their ability with what COVID's done, like it is with every other team. And next week it could be another team. You know, Colorado State's playing great. In 2 weeks they could have 7 players out and go on a 9-game skid. That still potentially can happen to them. So what I'm saying it is an even playing field. It's not like performance enhancing drugs you can't impair. That is a decision that players and people make to do things they get caught and they get in trouble for. This is no decision. This is something that happens to you just like an injury.
Because the institutions, the powers that be, have decided that a sickness, a disease, is grounds to not just that person not to play, but anybody that person has been in contact with. Like Michael Jordan played one of the most memorable moments in sports with the flu, like the flu game, right? One of the most, I mean, now there's question if he really had the flu, is food poisoning, whatever it was, or maybe just a hangover. But with the suspicion of a flu, he wasn't then told you can't play, and everybody that was in your hotel room that night can't play that day for 14 days, or your program has to shut down and can't practice for X amount of days. That's the difference here with what I'm saying with COVID. And I get it. It's the right thing to do for safety and trying to flatten the curve or stop the spread of it. But I'm saying that it's very different than a random injury that happens as a result of playing the sport. If Tom Brady blows out his ACL, that's a part of playing the game. COVID and all the restrictions that come with it is not a part of the playing field. So it can affect people differently. That's all I'm saying. It's very different. So I get what you're saying. If you want to look at it through that lens, it's random. It happens to every team has to figure out how to play without, but your coach isn't injured and he can't coach the game for the Browns. There's 4 coaches that can't coach. Like, what is coaching?
Coach could have a heart attack and he can't coach the game. I'm just saying, no, Caleb
had a heart attack and not been able to coach a game.
I'm saying it's random, just like this. But again, I'm not disputing what you're saying. I'm just saying it is an equal playing field that everyone has the potential. But to your point, if Tom Brady blows out his knee, it shouldn't affect the other 4 quarterbacks. Shouldn't all blow out 32 because they were sitting in the same room with him. And your point's very well taken. But again, everyone is under the same exact situation. So that's the difference. It's like everyone's not in the same situation. Well, 4 guys on your team decide to take performance-enhancing drugs. No, they're screwed. They made that decision. You're right. You don't make a decision to get COVID, but again, it's something that can affect everyone.
So if that something doesn't affect everybody the same in that particular matchup. So like Colorado State didn't have any issues with COVID coming into the matchup with UNLV. So now that game is tainted, right? Like, so the results of that game are tainted because one team was affected by something adversely and the other team wasn't. So it's not random at that point. It's UNLV has 8 players available. One of them happens to be one of their best players, a starter, a senior who has a huge impact. And then Colorado State has a full healthy roster. And they've been able to practice for 30 days prior to this game. So that, to me, that's where I say there's a difference. And COVID has tainted the results of this season. So no, you can't judge a UNLV team that's been decimated by COVID as being bad or good because you have no idea what the team looks like in a real situation.
No, and again, I agree. I'm just saying in 2 weeks from now, Colorado State could go through the exact same thing and go on a losing streak themselves. So that's why I'm saying it's more of an even playing field than like a performance-enhancing drugs. Everyone runs the risk of this happening to their team at some point during the season. But is it tainted? Is it tarnished? Of course, this will be remembered forever. This is terrible. And it's so hard to gauge. Like I said, the Dodgers, I'm happy as hell that they got their World Series. Happy for you, happy for all LA fans. But realistically, Clayton Kershaw has showed throughout the past 7-8 years that in the postseason he's worn out. He wasn't worn out this year in the postseason because it wasn't a full 162 game season. Is that fair now to say that?
Okay, they're the world champions. Leave us alone.
Okay. There baseball wasn't tainted. Only all the other sports were because you're a Dodgers. And basketball wasn't tainted either because you're a Lakers fan. I get it.
Basketball had a bubble. Basketball had a bubble. They had the only bubble, and so did the NHL. So it's a little different. But no, leave the Dodgers out of this.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we're playing with a two-headed coin here. Two-headed coin. All right, let's move on real quickly. I do want to take a real quick break. On the other side of the break, we're going to bring in Dion Hodges, a guy that trains some of the Raiders. He's trained a superstar and potential Hall of Famer in Philadelphia, and his services are available. We're going to talk to him after this. I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a heated discussion over the guy that he trains and some of the things that have been said traditionally on this show about that guy. But I'm not going to say that the things that have been said weren't unjustified. We got to scrutinize hard. They make a lot of money in the National Football League. They have specific jobs to do. When they're not doing them to what we feel is the best of the ability, we're going to criticize. That's what happens. I wasn't as critical as my co-host and our intern were of this guy, but we'll still talk about that. On the other side, too, we do want to bring up we've got the national championship coming up tomorrow night. I think it's going to be a hell of a game. I think it's going to be a really good game. I just don't know if Ohio State wins. Again, do you deserve to call a team that's won 8 total games national champions in this day and age? I just don't think that's fair. Dabo Swinney made a point of it, and then Ohio State went and trounced Clemson. So that maybe it is fair if they are the best team. We'll talk about that, though. S&B with C will wrap up the Raiders season. They finished 8-8. Is that a good thing, a bad thing? We'll talk about that as well. And, of course, our picks of the week as we get into the NFL playoffs. We had 3 games yesterday. We got 3 games to pick from today. We'll do all that. You're listening to Out of Line. This is Fox Sports Radio. We'll be right back. Where do you want them to sit? Okay. But I want you to be able to chime in. You'll have to take the headset back from us.
I'll take care of his position.
Okay, Caleb's got his position. I figured that already. I told him.
It's a 2-minute break. So.
Okay.
You going right into it? We're gonna go right into practice, right? Are we going right into practice?
We are going. No, we're going to come back. I think this is after him. Look at the second.
After him. Okay.
It's after him. No, they're coming in right now. We're gonna do when he goes off. Just get in. This will help.
And now we'll talk about Ohio State. What you just said about COVID.
How you gonna make me turn into a hypocrite?
Yeah, because they're gonna win the national championship.
If you take 4 players, like I said, but if a team can't play less games than other teams, that I'll say they got to find a way to play the same amount of games. And if they can't compete.
I need a big.
Okay, so right when they go off, we'll do this.
Hey, inches matter, man. That's what she said. Let's get it. Facts.
Yeah, I'm ready. All right, we're back. Out of Line, Fox Sports Radio, 98.9 FM, 1340 AM. We are here same time every Sunday, 8 to 9. We are live at Kickers Gaming and Sports Bar, 931 North Las Vegas Boulevard. Today, I'm Brian Feldman, co-host Caleb Herring. Sitting to my left on your radio dial, of course, the Wiz is here. And back in studio, we have Dino Damon Cotton. And directly across from me here at Kickers, we are very social distance, is our guest today. He is Dion Hodges. He is a personal trainer, and I like he calls himself more a human performance specialist, which I think is a great title for somebody that personal trains. He's trained some pretty important people like Fletcher Cox of the Philadelphia Eagles, who is, several-time Pro Bowler. He's been up there, been considered for Defensive Player of the Year in the National Football League, done a hell of a job. He's come over here, a lot of acquaintances, and Dion Hodges has been training a guy playing in the secondary for the Las Vegas Raiders, Jonathan Abrams. And I think we brought up that name a couple times on the show here, once or twice. What's going on, Dion? Welcome to the show.
Good morning, man. How's everybody doing?
We are doing fantastic. First of all, give us a little history background. I know you played wide receiver in college. You're a college athlete as well, like Caleb. So I'm kind of surrounded here. I'm not. But talk about what got you into this and moved you into dealing and working with NFL players.
Okay. So I played at the University of Southern Miss, graduated in 2011. And so, it was just picking a major. I was transferring in from a JUCO, Mississippi Gulf Coast, and I got introduced to Knies. And from there, like I said, everything was going, pretty much as a student athlete. And I was just trying to figure out how could I stay around the sport. And it just kind of connected once I got introduced to that major. I saw that as a way to me, for me to still stay around the sport and help athletes like myself. Had some injuries earlier on in high school and just kind of took to the profession. And, it seems to be working out in my favor right now.
Personal training obviously is to build strength, to prevent injuries, and to obviously help you to perform at your top. You said you were injured, a player that was injured in high school, injured in college. What do you do as a personal trainer to try to prevent those things from happening?
Well, the main thing now is to educate, and I know that feels, sounds a little cliche, but getting injured early in high school and understanding what was going to take to build at the next level, just educating on the style of training, which platform you were going into. And that was just pretty much it. That was my biggest interest. Like when I tore my ACL, and I just feel like the PTs and therapists just helped me get back to the playing field. And that's something that I always wanted to provide. And that's just kind of transitioned up into the professional ranks, all the way down to the, like I said, local high school.
It's one of the most interesting things because when players, like I said, I had a similar thing.
I can't hear him.
It's one of those things. I had a similar situation where I was thinking about, as an athlete, how can I stay around the sport? And I took a different way, obviously going into broadcasting and things like that. But going into what I think is a profession for a lot of athletes that could not just, with sports physical therapy or personal training with athletes, but personal training has become sort of a trend, if you will, like an opportunity to become a trainer for, the local gym, to open your local gym, to build a brand that way. How did you, I guess, transform your playing career and use your playing career and that experience to then boost you into the professional realm of personal training? Because I think it's a lot of athletes could take this route because, they obviously have a lot of knowledge about dealing with injuries, being in the best shape, optimal shape. How did you use that experience as a player to kind of build a brand or to land clients or anything like that? And how has that helped you in your professional life?
I would say just, like I said, being a former collegiate player and transitioning into the professional ranks, my biggest thing, like now, even with some of the younger guys, of like, well, what does your brand represent? Like, who are you outside of football? And that was the main thing for me. It was just making sure that I had an identity, because I feel like the biggest struggle, well, one of the big struggles after sports is just that transition to being a normal civilian, or you don't have this title of being on the field. So just taking that approach and really getting to know the player and just figuring out, hey, I'm gonna meet you where you're at, and just providing some resources and things to help them, just become a better off athlete, and then also just making sure that they're taking care of things off the field.
Man, so that's big. So we talked about your clients. First of all, I want to say, while I don't apologize for the things that I say, I will say that I have been critical of Jonathan Davis, but it's not about his personal and physical physique. Like he's a beast as far as speed training, the athleticism and things like that. You can see the work he's put in. So if you're going to go with that, kudos to your regimen. Whatever you got him doing is working. He's a physical specimen. What is it like working with guys of that caliber and seeing them, being the headlines on whether good or bad on national stage? Just that I've worked with a guy, developed that guy, and then kind of patting yourself on the back, right? Like that guy is explosive, and I had something to do with that.
Well, I feel like that could be a little rat poison, as they say. Because I definitely can't take any credit for it. I feel like these guys would be at the same platform with or without me. I'm just happy to be a part of their journey. But yeah, just so working with those guys on the day-to-day, you have to normalize it. Just understanding that it's no diva mentality. It's pretty much they are who they are, but understanding we're here for one job. And that's, for me to help you become the best player you can be and maximize. So I just take the fame and the status out of it and just normalize the player. And, that's been successful, and they've been buying into that for the last few years. So that's just kind of my approach in the offseason.
Fletcher Cox getting hooked up with him, Dion. You're talking about a guy, 6-time Pro Bowler, won a Super Bowl, 52, obviously, with the Eagles. What does this guy do, or how much does he put in? Because you wonder when guys are Pro Bowlers, perennial every year, are they working harder than everyone else, or are they just more gifted, or the combination of both?
I would say a combo of both. Fletcher's definitely, next level talent, just off genetics and his approach. But also he does buy in. He's very, like I said, these guys really buy into, hey, what can I do to separate myself? And I received a text from Fletch a couple days ago, literally like, hey man, what's the game plan for for the offseason? Like literally, the season just kind of wrapped up for them in Philly, and he's already mentally there of like, okay, what does this look like? I'm planning out my year. So it's tremendous buy-in. But those guys do, and Fletcher has always, looked out and said, hey man, this is what I need to do. What can I do to separate myself? So we just kind of review the whole year, see how many snaps he's had. It was a big transition from Chip Kelly to Doug, of understanding how many snaps he was getting, level of play, what kind of system, who is he playing around the other front four. So yeah, man, just really taking a snapshot of the year and making sure that we're not leaving any stone unturned. So he's a vet, so towards the back end, I just always educate the guys of taking care of their body, just literally table work. I'm not caught up into all the fancy footwork and social media craze of training, and it's no disrespect to anyone in that industry, but just really taking more of a therapy approach of, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, injuries, and things like that, and then building out the strength and conditioning from there. There's no cookie cutter formula for me.
He is Dion Hodges joining us today, human performance specialist, a personal trainer, Fletcher Cox, I should say, also, of course, Jonathan Abrams, and also a rookie you trained that put on a hell of a performance yesterday and helped beat the Seattle Seahawks, Cam Akers. I heard you've had some work with Cam as well. Tell me something. We're talking about a rookie now, Jonathan Abrams, another real young player, and hopefully an up-and-coming player for the Raiders. What is the difference, Deanne? I've always wondered this. A guy like Fletcher Cox, who's now getting into his 30s, a veteran that's been in this league a while, and of course they call it the not-for-long league because the average player in the National Football League plays 3.1 seasons. Most people don't know that. What about a guy like Fletcher Cox now getting into his 30s? What kind of training regimen does he do now, maybe as compared he was in his 20s? I imagine it changes as they get older and maybe a little bit more limited in what they want, what they're able to do, or even what they should do.
Yeah, Fletcher become, transitioning to those later years in his career. Like I said, the main thing was educating him on the body work. He's done a good job of taking care of his body to even get to this point. So there is a transition early on, but also like it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Why wait to get to that year? So I tell my younger guys like John as well. It's like, why wait to year 6 or 7 if you're blessed to play that long to start taking care of your body? And we've had those back and forth conversations. John and Fletch have talked about, hey, Fletch, you share some experience of, hey, well, this is kind of what I've went through, even though they're two different players, two different dynamics. Just sharing that common knowledge of, hey, man, well, this is something that I will be mindful of moving forward. And there has been a transition with Fletch. There's no limitations on him. It's just understanding, he always say, hey man, I'm not going to get any stronger. My main thing is being efficient, being the same person I am in the first quarter throughout the entire game, down the stretch. I mean, we always text throughout the season, and we say they only remember what you do in November and December. And we take pride in coming alive at that point, just down the stretch. Unfortunately things didn't work out this season with them, of course, COVID, not making any excuses. But yeah, so just understanding where you are and building it out from there. But like I said, there's no cookie cutter approach.
Well, yeah, and the one thing with football, it's a game that's played with reckless abandon, and in many times the disregard for your body. And you see Jonathan Abrams plays that way. So does Fletcher Cox, two guys that put it all on the line out there. But sometimes putting it all on the line also causes you to be maybe a little less cerebral when it comes to the approach to the game, and that is, covering the guy. You're more interested hitting him, and you kind of lose focus. And that's something that Jonathan Abram has had problems with, and we know that, Caleb. As far as his ability to cover, none of us has ever questioned his physical prowess or his ability to knock someone on their ass. That he does. But when you play defensive back, that's almost secondary when it comes to, and no play on word secondary, but that's almost secondary when it comes to your first job is to cover and stop people from making big plays behind you. Then after they've made the play, then your job's to knock them down.
Yeah, no doubt that there's a separation. It goes across the board with every position group. I think there's a mental aspect to the game and there's a physical aspect, and the physical is half of the puzzle. And I think you have to have the mentality also, and not just schematically, but just situational playing. And I think there's not a lot you can do, from a personal trainer, physical trainer aspect to change that about a player. And it's something that he's going to learn and grow, just like he's going to learn and grow how to take care of his body better. Like you said, as experience, knowledge, and being a veteran guys, he's going to learn certain things. So, but there's no doubt to me that Jonathan Abram has some. I think the physical side, he's fine. The growth part needs to happen mentally with his on the field awareness and situational awareness and just being able to cover people in general. So, I mean, it is what it is. Like I said, there's no doubt that the physical side of Jonathan Abram is ready. He's molded to play the sport of football. If you could put a football player in the lap, he'd probably be the physical stature of a guy that can hit people really hard and run really fast. But can you do it the right way at the right time? That's, I think, where Jonathan Abrams is struggling a little bit right now. How much do you talk to him about his on the field demeanor, his on the field play, or is it just strictly with you? No, personal trainer, I'm training you on how to be a physical specimen, how to maximize your physical ability.
No, man, we talk daily. There's an accountability. Like I said, I don't shy away from it. I always tell him, we check in after each game. Hey, I feel like you left some plays out, left some plays on the field. But also before the game, we always talk about the mindset and understanding one of our sayings to each other, just staying on your feet. With him going out last year to the injury, I felt like, the ground is undefeated. So, hey, stay on your feet, be an elite athlete. And, he has this moment where he's going to be reckless. He's coming in with bad intentions, and we just, continue to be mindful of it. And now that he has a full, complete, for the most part, 13 games under his belt, I know that he's starting to turn the curve on that of how to play the game, but still have his physicality, because that's who he is. So I get, we're very critical, and I don't shy away from it as well. Sometimes I see some of the things on Twitter or, some of the other reporters that are very harsh towards it. And that's a part of it. That comes with the territory, is what I always tell them. Hey, man, who are you? How are you going to play the game? We get that component. But now, how are you going to extend your career and still dominate in that area? So, no, it's always accountability with me. Every time I feel like he's, I watch every snap, literally every snap. Hey, what were you thinking right here? What are we doing right? What could we done better? And so just understanding what's the game plan as well, because sitting on the other side of the TV, sometimes, you could be very critical of a play, but it's like, hey, well, what was the call? What were we thinking here? Did I get schemed up? The other guys on the other side are pros too, so I get it, but like I said, I don't shy away from it. I hold his ass accountable. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. You're allowed to say that. The FCC allows the word ass. No, as you shouldn't. And we're hoping again with seeing Jonathan Abrams. I have really liked his physicality. I just think we all do, that his ability to cover and blanket receivers more is going to have to improve, obviously, to stay in the league, because that is his number one responsibility. Real quickly before we go, Dion, I want you to give everyone your personal contact information, what you do and how they can contact you or learn more about you.
Okay, yeah, I think my best form of communication is social media. So _D Hodges, Instagram and Twitter. Just whatever your needs may be. From an athletic standpoint, I do train some general pop. Just really overall better lifestyle. Just depending on what you might have a brother, sister, son that wants to get better in the athletic arena, and I'm here to help. New to Vegas, but I'm figuring this thing out.
I love it, and I'll tell you what, it's something he did help with. How about Cam Akers yesterday? 28 carries, 131 yards, 1 touchdown. That's some things personal training could do, make you big and strong and have this rookie going. He's Dion Hodges. We appreciate you, my friend. We'll have you on again in the future. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, guys.
Oh, it's Spencer's going to go hit fact this for us, and got about a little more than 10 minutes left on the show. Caleb, we're going to talk a little bit about the national championship game. I know we both have very strong feelings about that, and what should be and what should be. It's hard to argue that Ohio State and Alabama are the two best teams in the country. But Spencer, go ahead and give it to us if you got it over there.
Fact this. If you don't like the facts, take your ass back to bed. Fact this.
Fact. If Ohio State beats Alabama tomorrow night, they will be national champions after having played only 8 games total. This will be by far the fewest played to win a national championship in the modern era. Many already believe they do not deserve this opportunity based on their very limited body of work. Caleb, if the Buckeyes win, is it legit?
Based on our earlier discussion, you would have me to believe that it is, because every team is facing the same situation when it comes to game cancellation and COVID impact. It can happen to everybody. So no matter how it affected them, if they're an undefeated team, if they have the best record of, the winning percentage, they're the best team on the field, they deserve to win it. There's no doubt about that, because COVID has the ability to affect everybody the same way. And that's a part of this season. It's just a part of it. It's just like any other injury or game cancellation. We wouldn't, deem them unworthy if they, played a bunch of crappy teams, because that's just a part of it, right? So that there's 2 different arguments you could take. Yes, it's legit. If they're the best team, they dominated Clemson in the semifinals, and if they go forward and beat Alabama with how good Alabama's been on the season, they deserve to be national champions based on COVID not affecting everybody the same, or COVID being the same for everybody, like that whole argument. But COVID affected them, and that's why they only have 8 games. That's why they will only have played 8 games if they win it. So, yeah, it's legit in that line of thinking. I don't think necessarily it is, because you had to bend the rules to make this happen. In a COVID year, one of the best teams was affected by it. So it doesn't affect everybody the same, because COVID shouldn't have allowed them to be in. They didn't play enough games. That's the thinking, right? They didn't play enough games to be in it. And at the end of things, that should count for something. But it doesn't when you're Ohio State. It doesn't. I'm sure if you were Alabama, it wouldn't have affected you. But Coastal Carolina or UCF or Cincinnati had been affected by COVID. It would have been the scapegoat to say, this is why you can't be national champions. But it's not all equal. It's not distributed equally amongst the teams that should have been, in my opinion, in the top 4 this year, if everything was just normal. So it depends on which lens you look at through. I think it's not legit, but there's people out there that do. And that's what COVID seasons have produced. And that's the fear that when we get to the end, it's going to be like, well, this team was affected by COVID. They shouldn't even have been there. They shouldn't even have had this opportunity. But Ohio State's getting it. If they're the best team, then they're the best team.
You've got a really good point. I'm really torn here. But what I will say is Ohio State beat Clemson, who, it was arguably they beat Notre Dame in the rematch. And so people said legitimately Clemson's there, when they beat them in the ACC championship game. And Ohio State trounces Clemson. And now if they beat Alabama today, I got to say, yes, they deserve it, only because they've beaten the 2 best teams that have been in the polls as the best team pretty much the entire season. But I agree, they're not playing as many games. Can you say, well, Alabama played 4 more games? They were more beat up than Ohio State. You could look at that as well. But I mean, you're being the 2 best teams at the end of the season when everyone's at their peak. It's hard for me to say they're not. But again, I'm still saying it's not a legit season, but I would still say they're the best team in the country. If they beat Alabama, they're the best team in the country. Let's put it that way.
So here's the only issue I have with that, because a part of the season, a part of being the best team that season is playing the season. Like making it 12 games, 13 games, unblemished, or, without any stumbles along the way. That's a part of winning a season. Like, to me, the amount of games you play has to factor in, because now if a team just play, for whatever reason, forfeitures or wasn't able to fill the schedule with the minimum amount of games, now you could just basically sit out a season and then come beat the best team on that one night, and all of a sudden you're good. You're the best at that point in time, when Alabama has been the best all year. They played their whole schedule, right? Clemson even played their whole schedule. A fuller schedule, because they started the season right at the beginning of things, when the Big Ten already, in my opinion, started late. And there's the length of a season actually matters when determining who's the best that year. Just being the best for the last 2 games, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily justify that you're the best team for that season, because you didn't even play a whole season. So I think the length and durability of greatness is a part of being considered the greatest team of that season. But like I said, I'm completely for Ohio State being in this thing for the entertainment value of what I think the best 4 teams this year, and maybe Notre Dame is questionable, but the best 4 teams in college football this season got a chance to play and entertain us. And that's the only value I'm getting from the season, is that the sport is still being entertaining. I don't think Cincinnati, Alabama would have been entertaining. Ohio State, Alabama, arguably the 2 best or most world renowned programs when it comes to college football, are meeting in the national championship. That there's entertainment value to that. That's all I'm really worried about as a fan of the game. When you talk about the who deserves and who doesn't, that's for somebody else to figure out. And I think there's so many different ways you could slice that pie. But entertainment value, Ohio State, Alabama is, I think, the best result this college football season could have brought us, all things considered. And I mean, Clemson, Alabama could have been there too, but we've seen that story before. I think Ohio State, Alabama is probably the best entertainment value we could have got out of this college football season.
I agree 100%, because I am actually really looking forward to watching the game tomorrow night for that purpose alone, for the entertainment value of watching what I consider the 2 best teams in college football go at it this year. But again, it's still tarnished. And does Ohio State deserve to have a crown and get rings for winning 8 games? Maybe, like I said, it's tough for me. We're not going to have really time for S and B and C, other than to say, Caleb, one real quick, just a comment. 8-8, the Raiders finish. They kind of win it in dramatic fashion. Denver goes for 2 points, of course, to prevent them having to go to overtime, which I think was smart. Or the Raiders went for 2. But the point is, they ended up 8-8. Good, bad, indifferent.
I would say indifferent. I think it's good that they won 8 games, and that's a big thing. They would have won the NFC going away, like the NFC East. They'd been in the playoffs if they're in the NFC East, but that's a whole nother topic. But I don't think 8-8 should be, if your standard is Super Bowl contender or playoff contender, 8-8 should not be a win. You can't look at that as a win. But I think inaugural season in Vegas, with everything that happened, I think your window to win with this roster is still there. But I think I'm glad they didn't make the playoffs this year, because this year proved that they're not ready defensively to be a playoff team. So I think that taste lets the ownership, the GM, Gruden, whoever needs to know that we got work to do on the defensive side, whether it's the coaches or the personnel. So you can't kind of, I guess, skim by and say, yeah, we're good. We can just bring the same roster out or the same staff out and go at it again next year. We should be in the playoffs. No, you can't. I think it should be considered, the way the defense played at times in the year, it should be considered a miracle that they were even in the hunt late in the season, right? Because they had a terrible defense, and that's no secret. So now losing, I think, and not making the playoffs, they won their last game, but not making the playoffs gives you a kind of a sense of urgency to fix the glaring deficiencies on defense. And that, to me, is the silver lining of everything. Would have loved to see them make the playoffs, but I think this year, defensively, they weren't ready, and they would have been similar to Washington, just an early exit wildcard team that made it. Yeah, whoopee, but you got bounced early. And I don't see anybody in the AFC, especially on the AFC side of the bracket, where all teams were 11-win teams at least. I think every team in the AFC is an 11-win team. So I don't think the Raiders were at all ready to play anybody that made it in the field in the AFC. I think they get smoked in the first round or in the wild card like that too. But so I think the Raiders got to go fix some things, go back to the drawing board on defense and figure it out, because you have a playoff offense, but you don't have a playoff team because your defense stinks. Fix it.
Fair enough. Final segment. We're talking NFL playoffs. We're almost out of time. Let's do our pick segment. First, yesterday's games, as you know, Rams biggest upset of the day going into Seattle, although those teams very familiar with each other. The Colts gave the Bills all they could handle, but the Bills finally win a playoff game for the first time in a quarter century. And Tom Brady moves to a new team, same results. They move on to the next round of the playoffs. Look at that. The Bucs became relevant in 1 year. We'll talk about that next week more as these teams get ready to play. But 3 big games today: Ravens, Titans, Bears, Saints, and of course the nightcap, Browns, Steelers. Caleb, you won the regular season for between us. Actually, the guest won the regular season, but between us, you got it. Pick first in the playoffs. Who are you taking tonight?
Alvin Kamara back and Michael Thomas back against the Bears. I think they're going to dominate against the Bears. Their defense has been probably the best that it's ever been while Drew Brees is there. So I think they are kind of the, I don't want to say underdog, but a sleeper to win the NFC. I know Packers have gotten a lot of attention, but I think the Saints are pretty much even right now with the Packers as far as their ability to win the division or the conference. So I'm going Saints against the Bears in a landslide.
Kayla, I should say Spencer, tell me what you got over there.
I'll take the Steelers -5.5. There's no way the Browns are able to recover from all their COVID-19 issues. Unfortunate, we won't see an even game, but that's just what we got.
Well, Spencer, in the Review Journal, it's 6.5. So you'll take the Steelers giving up the 6.5. And you know what? I am going to go with the Baltimore Ravens favored against the Tennessee Titans. Home dog, I can't believe it, but I think Lamar Jackson's going to have a big game today. And I think the Ravens will move on. And they're a team that's going to be a little bit scary if they get past this game. Listen, we're out of time. This is Out of Line. I want to thank our guest, Dion Hodges, for coming in today. That was awesome. Thank Damon Cotton back in the studio, the Wiz, our intern and social media director, of course, co-host Caleb Herring. I'm Brian Feldman. This is Out of Line, live from Kickers Gaming and Sports Bar. We will be here every Sunday, same time, 8 to 9. Make sure you come out. Up next, we have Pritch and Clay with the Sunday Football Special right here on Fox Sports Radio. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.